friends, and welcome into Gamecock Central Radio, talking baseball today with Gamecock Central staff writer Collyn Taylor. I'm Emerson Phillips, and Collyn, an interesting series for the Gamecocks with Florida this past weekend. Florida had been ranked number 1 in the country much of the year. They slipped to number 2 in the polls after dropping 2 games to Central Florida, but they came into Columbia and took 2 out of 3 from South Carolina. But despite the fact that the Gamecocks lost the series, Mark Kingston pretty pleased with his ball club at this early juncture in the season.
Yeah, and, I think that, coming into this weekend, if you had told me that South Carolina would take a game against Florida, I would have probably considered that a win for this team just because of how inexperienced they are. And this is the first, nationally ranked, top 5 team, top 5 test of the season, and they held their own. Kingston was not happy at all with losing the series, but said that there's a lot of positives to draw on, and you can only get better now playing the number 1 team in your conference with the defending national champion to start SEC play, which is always a huge benefit for this team. And even Kevin O'Sullivan said after the game, Florida got swept their first series, SEC series last year, so this series is never always indicative of what a team could turn into, especially down the stretch in May and June.
A crowd of 7,034 at Founders Park watched Florida beat South Carolina 7-3 on Friday night in Game 1 of the series. South Carolina scored first in the bottom of the first, a 2-out seeing eye single from L.T. Tolbert to score T.J. Hopkins. But then Florida would score 2 runs in the 4th, 1 in the 5th, and 2 more in the 6th. And, Collyn, this was the marquee pitching matchup of the weekend. Adam Hill ended up taking the loss for the Gamecocks, 3 runs on 3 hits and 6 Ks with 5 walks in 4 2/3 innings. And Florida's outstanding junior right-hander Brady Singer was the winning pitcher, 2 hits and a run allowed, 7 strikeouts in 6 innings pitched. It was Singer's 5th win of the year, and that leads the SEC.
Yeah, and, it's Adam Hill and Mark Kingston both said that it was kind of an uncharacteristic start from Hill this weekend. He wasn't able to locate as well as he had over his last 3 starts. The fastball wasn't necessarily working as well as it has been, and Florida did a good job kind of getting to him and drawing walks right away. And the strike zone didn't help with that at all. The umpire was very inconsistent for both teams, and ended up tossing Mark Kingston and tossing Carlos Cortez on that Friday night game, pretty emotionally charged. And it was just South Carolina didn't really have an answer for Brady Singer, who's a projected top 10 pick in this year's draft.
Yeah.
So he was electric. And I think that, that was a game that, you knew would kind of be a little bit back and forth. And, it was really who got to the starting pitcher first. And Florida was able to kind of jump on Adam Hill and ride that one till the end.
Yeah, and the 5 walks for Hill certainly didn't help. Florida took advantage of those free passes, and Florida was just clearly the better team on Friday. So at that point, Collyn, we had to wonder how the Gamecocks would respond, and the Gamecocks broke out the bats on Saturday, played what Mark Kingston said was probably their best game of the season, beat Florida 15-7 in front of 7,207 at Founders Park. South Carolina with a season-high 16 hits. The Gamecocks hit 4 home runs and an outstanding effort from Cody Morris, a career-high 10 strikeouts on the mound for the Gamecocks.
Yeah, and, I think that the biggest, you look at how, they had 15 runs, I want to say, and they had 16 hits, but, Cody Morris's outing was probably the biggest storyline and biggest takeaway because he dominated a really, really good Florida lineup. It looked like a guy that could, work with Adam Hill and kind of be these 2 shutdown guys when Adam Hill's on. And that was the big thing. His changeup was working really well. He showcased a curveball for really the first time this season consistently, and Florida really didn't know what to do with it. And that outing could be nothing but beneficial for Morris, who has been kind of streaky at times this season. And then obviously the bats got together. Jacob Holton had a huge day, had a huge weekend, and Jonah Bride really stayed with it, and he's been working on trying to get comfortable in his stance, making sure that he's kind of short to the ball, getting there quick. And I think the tweaks in his mechanics have paid off. I think he had the RBI hit Friday and had a huge game Saturday as well to kind of help vault that team to a pretty massive victory against a top 5 team.
Collyn, you were at Founders Park this weekend, and I caught the beginning of Saturday's game on the radio, And I wanted to get you to talk about Noah Campbell's inside the park home run. He hit a ball off the wall in right field early in that ball game. It hit the top of the wall, and he tried to score on an inside the park home run. It was initially called out at home, but the umpires went to replay at Mark Kingston's behest, and the ruling at home was overturned, and Campbell was ruled safe. So it was the Gamecocks' first inside the park home run since 2009. And listening to that play on the radio, Collyn, that was the most exciting play I've heard this season.
Yeah, and, it was funny because we really didn't think that, it looked like he just kind of got under it, and it was going to be a lazy fly ball into, deep right field. But then all of a sudden it kept going, and then kept going, and kept going. We're like, this has a chance to get out. And then it hits the top of the wall and bounces off, and the right fielder can't get to it, and it kind of rolls into the middle of the outfield. Noah, being arguably the fastest guy on the team, motors his way home, and I don't think the umpire wasn't in a really good spot to see the ball and the tag, but he was in there by a good couple, about a second. He gets in there and he's safe, and that was about one of the coolest plays I've ever gotten to cover, just based on the rareness of it.
Yeah,
and just it was special just because that's a freshman doing that, and. He's good. I think Noah Campbell's going to be a really, really, really good player at South Carolina.
Yeah, a lot of folks excited about the future for Noah Campbell in a Gamecock uniform. So that got the game started. And this was a really exciting ball game. Both teams hit 4 home runs, and South Carolina got 5 runs in the 6th inning. The Gamecocks had 3 2-out hits in that 5-run 6th. And then the Gamecocks had a 6-run 8th inning, and the 15 runs was the most by the Gamecocks in an SEC game since they scored 19 against Tennessee in 2013. And after this game, Collyn, the Gamecocks had hit 31 home runs on the season, and at this point last year they had hit 21. So we talked about, during the offseason fall ball and whatnot, Mark Kingston placing an emphasis on hitting more home runs, and the Gamecocks are doing that so far this year.
Yeah, and I think they had 53 all of last season. So it's, and that set a school record in the current BB Core bat era. So I think that record is definitely in jeopardy right now. A lot has to depend on what they do the rest of the SEC play, obviously. But, they're, insane in terms of just being able to lift the ball. Their launch angle is phenomenal, and they're really, really good about, driving the ball into the gap and trying to get extra bases because they know that's kind of what wins games.
So Sunday's game was the rubber match. Collyn, 7,113 the attendance. And Florida beat the Gamecocks 3-2. Florida had 4 hits in the ball game. They got an infield single. They had 2 home runs and a triple. And Florida kind of took advantage of a Gamecock miscue in the 4th inning, and that was the difference in the ball game.
Yeah, and Rich Chapman hit a batter, and then had an errant pickoff throw where the runner got to go to third, and then scored on the sac fly. So Florida, credit them. They took advantage and capitalized on the other team's mistakes and used that. But other than that, it was a phenomenal baseball game. Really good pitching on both sides, clutch hitting at some points for South Carolina and Florida. And, you really got to see kind of 2 pretty good college baseball teams go at it, and that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was an interesting series, and we found out a lot about both teams, I think, particularly the Gamecocks. And, the Gamecocks lost the series. Certainly reason to believe that the Gamecocks are going to have a good club here in 2018. So the first SEC series of the season is in the books. The Gamecocks are now 13-7 on the year. They're 1-2 in the conference, and Florida improves to 18-4, and they're 2-1 in the league. So, Collyn, news this week that Tuesday night's game scheduled for Charleston against the Citadel moved to Columbia due to the fear of inclement weather in the Low Country. So instead of going to Charleston, the Gamecocks will get a home game Tuesday night against the Citadel, and April 10th game scheduled for Columbia has now been moved to Riley Park. So they flip-flopped the 2 games, and Citadel's coming here Tuesday night.
Yes, and it's just kind of a chance for South Carolina to get their feet back under them and kind of continue, even though they lost the series, some of the positive momentum that they got from that Saturday performance and then a pretty good pitching performance on Sunday. And kind of test out, they're still working with Logan Chapman, who's the midweek guy, just in terms of his mechanics and kind of getting him ready maybe for a weekend role over the course of his career. And it's just another chance, I guess, for South Carolina to put another win in the notch, another win in the win column, and I guess get on track for another big road series this weekend.
The Citadel swept by Indiana State recently, Collyn, and that was a gut punch according to their head coach. Citadel's got a new head coach, and obviously South Carolina in its first year under Mark Kingston. So Gamecocks and Citadel, two proud baseball programs with rich traditions, both with new head coaches.
Yeah, and, you really don't see that just because South Carolina, the state usually doesn't turn over coaches really that often. So it's kind of unique for, both programs to be breaking in a new head coach at the same time. And, I'm intrigued to see because, Mark Kingston's still kind of learning the history of all of the programs in the state, and it'll be kind of cool, his first chance to go up against a really historic program and, what they built down in Charleston.
Collyn, can you confirm the pitching matchup Tuesday night? Gamecocks expected to start right-hander Logan Chapman, 1-0 with a 3.38 ERA, and it looks like the Citadel will counter with their right-hander Thomas Bialik, 0-2 with a 5.17 earned run average.
Yeah, that'll be the pitching matchup unless something unforeseen happens over the next, or according to about 3. So unless something happens over the next few hours, I expect Logan to kind of get the ball for South Carolina. Pitch first few innings for him.
Yeah, we're recording here on Tuesday afternoon, and the Gamecocks and Citadel will meet at 7 o'clock at Founders Park on Tuesday night tonight. So then, Collyn, the Gamecocks hit the road for the first time in conference play. They're at Georgia this weekend, and Georgia, I thought it was interesting, Collyn, they went to Charleston and played 5 games against 3 different teams earlier this month, and they got swept by College of Charleston. They lost 1 game to Charleston Southern, and they actually beat the Citadel in their 5th game in Charleston earlier this month. So they went 1-4 in that trip to the Lowcountry earlier this month.
Yeah, and, Chad Holbrook was, able to beat Georgia. He hadn't won his last 2 series against me at South Carolina, I think the last 3. So, that was a big statement win for College of Charleston. And, a lot of people looked at Georgia as maybe a sleeper in the East this year in terms of talent. But, that once they got swept there, I think that took a little bit of a backseat in terms of thinking that they could come in and, maybe upset the likes of, Florida, Vanderbilt, and Kentucky and South Carolina at the top of the East. So it was kind of I wouldn't say season defining, but kind of regressing back to, I guess, the mean and the norm for both College of Charleston and Georgia.
Yeah, you got to give the Bulldogs credit. They bounced back after that rough trip to Charleston, and they actually won their season-opening conference series this past weekend. They went to Tuscaloosa and took 2 out of 3 from a good Alabama team. Bama won the first game Friday night in extra innings, but then Georgia came back and won on Saturday and Sunday by the same score, 6-5. So it was 3 one-run games, and Georgia took 2 out of 3 at Alabama. So that'll be up next, coming up this weekend for the Gamecocks. Kip Balknight and I will be back here on Gamecock Central Radio for a full preview of the Georgia series later in the week. Collyn Taylor joining me today to talk about this Florida series and a look at tonight's Citadel game. Thanks very much, Collyn.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on. I always enjoy it.
All right, always my pleasure. Collyn Taylor, our staff writer with Gamecock Central, and I'm Emerson Phillips, and this is Gamecock Central Radio. Thanks for joining us.